January 22, 2006. Staples Center, Los Angeles. The fourth quarter is almost over. The Toronto Raptors have tried everything: double teams, zone defense, timeouts, prayers. None of it matters. The man guarding the ball has scored 55 points in the second half alone. The Raptors bench sits in stunned silence, staring at the floor like men watching a building burn down and realizing they left the stove on. The final buzzer sounds. Lakers 122, Raptors 104. Kobe Bryant has just scored 81 points, the second highest single-game total in NBA history. The crowd doesn't cheer so much as erupt, like a pressure valve finally blowing. Opposing players shake their heads. Commentators lose their words mid-sentence. But behind that performance was a story the cameras never showed. How does a shy, socially awkward American kid, who grew up in Italy speaking the wrong language, with no friends, no connections, and no guarantee of ever reaching the NBA, become the most obsessive, most feared, most celebrated basketball player who ever lived? That's the story you're about to hear, and I promise you, you don't know the half of it. Most documentaries about Kobe Bryant start with the highlights, the dunks, the championships, the Black Mamba persona. This one starts in a small Italian town where a boy with a basketball had no one to pass to and nowhere to go but up. By the time we reach his final NBA game, you'll understand why Kobe Bryant was never just a basketball player. He was a warning to every person who ever settled for being ordinary. And it all begins somewhere nobody expects. It begins in Italy. Joe Bryant was a professional basketball player, not an NBA superstar, but good enough to play in the Italian leagues when his American career stalled. So in 1984, he packed up his family and moved to Reggio, a small town in central Italy. His son Kobe was 6 years old. Imagine being 6. You don't speak the language. You don't understand the jokes. The other kids at school look at you like you arrived from another planet. You go home, and your home isn't even really your home. It's just another apartment in another city your father was hired to play in. Kobe Bryant spent 7 of his most formative years this way. Reggio Calabria, Reggio Emilia. He learned Italian so fluently that locals thought he was native, but he was never fully Italian. And when he visited family back in Philadelphia, he wasn't fully American either. He was caught between two worlds, and he belonged completely to neither. This is where the obsession started, not out of passion at first, out of necessity. Basketball was the one language everyone spoke. On the court, you didn't need words. You needed moves. Kobe threw himself into the game with the hunger of a kid who had nothing else to cling to. While other children were playing in the piazzas after school, Kobe was on the court. Alone, mostly. Shooting the same shot over and over and over until the light died and the court went dark. His father was his first coach and his first opponent. Joe Bryant pushed Kobe relentlessly, not with cruelty, but with the quiet, firm pressure of a man who understood what the game demanded. Kobe absorbed every lesson. Then he went beyond them. There's a story, and people who knew him then have confirmed versions of it, that young Kobe kept a journal of moves he wanted to learn, not highlights he wanted to imitate, moves he wanted to master. He was 12 years old, writing a technical roadmap to becoming a professional basketball player in a country where basketball was a minor sport. This is not a childhood story. This is the origin of Kobe Bryant motivation, the first proof that what looked like obsession to everyone else was, to Kobe, just Tuesday. And here's the part nobody talks about, that loneliness. He never tried to fix it. He learned to use it. The isolation that would have broken other kids became fuel. The outsider status that might have made someone pull back made Kobe push forward. He was building a version of himself that didn't need anyone's approval because he'd never had it to begin with. In 1991, the Bryants came home. Kobe was 13 years old and he enrolled at Lower Merion High School in the Philadelphia suburbs. And here's where the story takes its first sharp turn, because Kobe Bryant returned to America as something nobody had ordered. A kid who was already better than almost everyone around him, and who had absolutely no interest in pretending otherwise. His teammates weren't sure what to make of him. The Italian kid who spoke with a slight accent and had opinions about post-move footwork at 13. Some called him cocky. Some called him difficult. His first varsity coach tried, diplomatically, to fold him into a system. Kobe politely ignored him, not out of arrogance, out of certainty. He already knew with a clarity that bordered on eerie exactly who he was going to become. Everyone else was still guessing. By his junior year, Kobe Bryant was the most recruited high school player in the country. He was averaging 30 points, 12 rebounds, and 6 assists per game. In his senior year, he led Lower Merion to its first state championship in 53 years. He was named Pennsylvania Player of the Year. He dunked over people who would later play Division I college basketball and made it look inconvenient. But here's what the box score doesn't show: the mornings before anyone else arrived. Teammates have told this story in interviews, how they'd show up to practice in the afternoon to find the gym floor already wet with sweat. Kobe had been there since 5 a.m., before school, before breakfast, before the janitors unlocked the building. He had talked someone into giving him a key. He shot for 2 hours in the dark, alone, before anyone else's alarm went off. This is Kobe Bryant's work ethic in its earliest form. Not a brand, not a hashtag, not a speech. Just a wet gym floor at dawn and a kid who refused to be ordinary. The Mamba Mentality was never taught to him. He invented it before he had a name for it. June 26, 1996, the NBA Draft, Madison Square Garden. Kobe Bryant has done something no player from his generation attempted. He declared for the NBA Draft straight out of high school. He skipped college entirely. He told anyone who would listen that he was ready. Most people didn't believe him. With the 13th pick in the draft, the Charlotte Hornets selected Kobe Bryant. And here is where history almost went wrong. Kobe had made one thing very clear before draft night. He wanted to be a Los Angeles Laker. He had his destination in mind the way a compass needle finds north. There was simply no other direction. But the Lakers held the 24th pick, not the 13th. Charlotte got there first. Now ask yourself, what happens if that trade never gets made? Jerry West, the Lakers' general manager, had been watching Kobe Bryant with the careful attention of a man who recognized something rare. He didn't see a 17-year-old. He saw something he'd only seen once or twice in his entire career. But the Lakers didn't have the pick. The Hornets did. So Jerry West made some phone calls. The details have been reconstructed from multiple accounts. West reached out to Charlotte. The offer: the Lakers would take veteran center Vlade Divac off the Hornets' hands, clearing salary and giving Charlotte a proven, mobile big man in exchange for their rights to Kobe Bryant. Charlotte's new ownership was focused on cap space and roster construction. The deal made sense for them on paper. They said yes. Imagine being 17 years old and getting a phone call that changes your entire life. Not because you earned it in that moment. You hadn't played a single NBA minute yet. But because 2 executives hundreds of miles apart decided, on a summer afternoon, that the math worked out. The trade was this close to not happening. West himself has said the Hornets nearly backed out. If one conversation goes differently, if Charlotte's front office holds on to that pick, Kobe Bryant spends the first years of his career in North Carolina. No Phil Jackson, no Shaq, no Staples Center, no dynasty. The entire trajectory of basketball history balances on a single phone call that could have gone either way. It didn't, and the rest, as they say in every story that earns that phrase, is history. Kobe Bryant entered the NBA at 18 years old. He played his first season in flashes, explosive, brilliant, occasionally reckless. In the 1997 playoffs against Utah, with the game on the line, he shot 4 consecutive air balls. 4. The arena went from tense to brutal in real time. The sports media had a field day. Too young, too raw, too much too soon. Kobe went home that summer and shot air balls every single day until the motion was rebuilt from scratch. He did not avoid the failure. He studied it like a surgeon studying a scar. Then came Shaquille O'Neal, and everything accelerated. Shaq was the most physically dominant player in the league. Kobe was the most technically relentless. Together, they were meant to be unstoppable. And for 3 straight years, 2000, 2001, 2002, they were 3 consecutive NBA championships. A dynasty announced to the world. The kind of basketball that made people stop mid-sentence and turn toward the TV. But watch any footage from those championship runs carefully and you'll see something underneath the celebration. 2 gravitational forces occupying the same space. Shaq wanted deference. Kobe gave it up to a point, and that point got closer every season. In Kobe Bryant interviews from that period, he's always careful, diplomatic, but the words he chooses tell you everything. He talks about winning, never about fitting in. He talks about the process, never about harmony. He was already thinking 10 moves ahead, and part of those 10 moves involved a future where he wasn't playing second violin. The clock on the Shaq-Kobe era was ticking from day one. Everyone felt it. Nobody said it out loud, not yet. And then everything collapsed at once. 2003, Eagle, Colorado. Kobe Bryant was arrested and charged with a crime that would have ended most careers before trial. The details were everywhere, in newspapers, on television, in every conversation about basketball for over a year. The case was eventually dropped after the civil complaint was settled, and Kobe always maintained his innocence. But the damage to his public image was total. His endorsement deals evaporated overnight. His reputation, carefully constructed over 7 years, was dismantled in weeks. He showed up to practice anyway. He played through it, not because he was made of stone, but because the court was the only place left where the rules still made sense. Then the Shaq feud went nuclear. What had been a quiet competition of egos became a public war. Comments in the press. Factions forming in the locker room. Phil Jackson, the architect of the three-peat, left. The entire support structure of Kobe's career dissolved inside of 12 months. In the 2004 NBA Finals, a Lakers team that looked on paper like a super team, Kobe, Shaq, Gary Payton, Karl Malone, was beaten in 5 games by the Detroit Pistons. A team that played defense, trusted each other, and had nothing to prove. Shaquille O'Neal was traded to Miami that summer. The dynasty was over, and in the court of public opinion the verdict was swift. Kobe Bryant had broken it. The selfish star who couldn't share. The villain who drove out the big man. He had gone from champion to cautionary tale in a single offseason. Now ask yourself honestly, how do you come back from that? Your career was nearly destroyed. Your name is attached to a legal case you can't escape. Your dynasty dismantled and the blame placed squarely at your feet. Your coach is gone. Your co-star is gone. Everything that defined you for 7 years gone. Most people don't come back from that. They manage it. They survive it. They spend years explaining themselves in interviews. Kobe Bryant went to the gym. 2005. The Lakers are a .500 team. Kobe Bryant is their entire offense, their entire identity, and according to most analysts, their entire problem. He didn't argue, he just worked. The 4M sessions became legend, not because Kobe talked about them, but because trainers and teammates who accidentally witnessed them couldn't stop. He was studying film at midnight, developing a post-game that made him virtually unguardable at any position, reinventing his footwork the way a classical musician reinvents a phrase, not because it was broken, but because it could be better. The Kobe Bryant work ethic, already mythic, was operating now without the safety net of Shaq's dominance underneath him. There was no system to fall back on. Every possession came to him. Every fourth quarter came to him. Every failure, and there were many, because the team was thin and the nights were long, was his. And then came January 22, 2006. You already know the score, 81 points. The second quarter alone would have been a good game for most players. This was Kobe Bryant alone dismantling an entire franchise in a single Tuesday night. No Shaq, no dynasty, no Phil Jackson. Just a player who had spent 2 years in the dark building something nobody else could see yet. The Kobe Bryant highlights from this period aren't just athletic achievements. They're a document of what happens when a person removes every excuse, every crutch, every support structure, and discovers what's actually left. What was left was terrifying. In 2008, Kobe Bryant was named NBA Most Valuable Player. Finally, after years of being considered the best player on earth without the trophy to match. It was a vindication that arrived almost quietly, because by then the argument was settled. Everyone knew. But the moment that reframed everything came that summer, not in a Lakers uniform. The United States sent its first true professional basketball team to the Beijing Olympics since 2004's bronze medal disaster. This was the redeemed team, and Kobe was its heartbeat, not just its scorer, its leader. For 3 weeks in China, the world watched a different Kobe Bryant, deferring to teammates, setting screens, playing defense for 32 minutes a night, laughing in huddles. He won the gold medal, and with it, something that no statistic could measure, proof that the villain narrative was wrong, that what looked like ego from a distance was, up close, just a standard that everyone else struggled to meet. Then Pau Gasol arrived in Los Angeles, and a new dynasty began to take shape. The Black Mamba was back, and this time he was building something that would outlast every criticism ever written about him. The 2009 NBA Finals. Kobe Bryant wins his 4th championship, but more importantly, his first without Shaquille O'Neal. The narrative is complete on paper. He had proved the doubters wrong. He had climbed back from the darkest period of his career and arrived, without the partner everyone said he needed, at the summit. He could have stopped there. Most people would have. Then came 2010. Game 7 of the NBA Finals against the Boston Celtics, his greatest rival, his most hated opponent, the team that represented everything Kobe needed to defeat to close his story properly. The game was brutal. Not the brilliant basketball of peak Lakers basketball, but something harder. 24 points on 18 shot attempts, 15 rebounds. An ugly, grinding, everything hurts performance in the biggest game of the decade. The buzzer sounded. The Lakers won, Kobe's 5th championship, his 2nd consecutive Finals MVP. And in that moment, watching him hold the trophy, something is different from every previous celebration. He cries, not the relieved tears of someone who survived, but something deeper. The tears of a man who, for 7 years, carried a weight that most of us will never understand, and finally, on the biggest stage the sport offers, set it down. He had done it on his terms, and the world could no longer argue with that. On April 13, 2016, Kobe Bryant played his final NBA game. He was 37 years old, his body worn down by 20 seasons of the most demanding standard in professional sports. The Lakers were having one of their worst seasons in history. None of that mattered. He scored 60 points in his farewell against a Jazz team fighting for a playoff spot. The final words he ever said to an NBA crowd, "Mamba out." 3 years later, on a January morning in 2020, the world received news that stopped it cold. We won't dwell there, because that's not where his story ends, and it's not where he would want us to look. What he left behind is too large, too lasting, to be reduced to a single morning. What he left behind is this. The first lesson Kobe Bryant teaches us is that obsession is not a personality flaw. It is a competitive advantage. Every person who ever called him difficult, impossible, or too intense was describing someone who had simply decided that good enough was never going to be enough. In whatever field you occupy, the people who change it are never the ones who wanted to be comfortable. They're the ones who couldn't stop. The second lesson: your greatest enemy will always be the version of yourself that wants to rest. Kobe Bryant won 5 championships, an Olympic gold medal, and an MVP award, and the 4 a.m. alarm kept going off. Not because he hadn't arrived, because he understood something most of us spend our whole lives avoiding, that the work is the destination, not a path to it. The third lesson is one he lived before he had words for it. The loneliness of being different is the price of becoming extraordinary. Every year he spent in Italy not fitting in. Every year at Lower Merion being called too cocky. Every year in Los Angeles I am called the villain. He never tried to close the distance between himself and the crowd. He used the distance as fuel. If people are comfortable around you, you're probably not doing anything that matters yet. And the fourth: legacy is not built in the wins. It is built in what you do after you lose everything. After Eagle, Colorado, after Shaq left. After the dynasty collapsed, the analysts wrote their epitaphs. The career that followed, the 81 points, the MVP, the gold medal, the back-to-back championships, that career was built in the silence after the fall when no one was watching and no one believed. That is the real Kobe Bryant documentary, not the highlights. The empty gym at midnight. The rebuilt shot. The 4 a.m. alarm no one else heard. The next time you watch that 81-point game, you won't see a basketball player. You'll see every lonely gym session in Reedy, every airball in Utah, every 4 a.m. alarm he never turned off, every season that almost broke him and didn't. That's what Mamba mentality actually means. And now you know.